I thank Dr. Jaishankar ji, Honorable External Affairs Minister, to be with us today amidst his busy schedule. Also, I'd like to mention, sir, your delivery at the UN General Assembly was factual, humble, yet pointed at the right directions where every Indian needs answers, be it UN or our neighboring countries. It was sir's idea to have a conversation rather than a keynote address. So, ladies and gentlemen, here's presenting Dr. Jaishankar, the voice of India's diplomacy to the world. So, beginning with a small gist. So, narratively, US is fighting to maintain world supremacy. China wants a pie of that. Russia has its own mind. Then we have the European Union. In such complex situations, we have successfully hosted the G20 summit as well.
We have India too.
Yes, that's the question, sir. So, with the G20 summit, we have also achieved some supreme diplomacy in our own terms. So, my question to you, sir, where does India stand in this race of world supremacy?
See, first of all, let me say it's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me and getting me to talk to all these wonderful people in front of me. So, think life is a competition, okay? And people compete. We compete in a classroom, we compete on the playground, we compete in our office, you compete in journalism. Similarly, nations compete. Okay? And, the nation or the person who comes first, they obviously like to hold on to it as long as possible. Others challenge it. Now, you can't challenge it overnight. You can't go from 20 to 1, you work your way up. So that is what you are seeing. Now, obviously the United States has been the most powerful nation since Second World War, almost 80 years ago. Now, if you take a nation like India, after we became independent, we have been slowly moving up. Maybe last 10 years, I would say we moved up very much faster. Economy has picked up. Today, it's not, economy is one measure. People would say technology to some degree, military capability, cultural influence. Also, to some, I would say things like leadership, human resource. So, yes, you have today in many areas a certain rivalry between US and China. But it's not, the world is not just US and China. The world has 193 members of the UN, and I would say very many countries today would consider themselves to be big enough and influential enough at least to determine their own particular area. So your question, where does India stand? I mean, you can say in a literal way, economically, we stand number 5. We were number 10 10 years ago. I think by all assessments, I mean, it's not just my assessment, by all assessments, in the next few years, we will move up from number 5 to number 3 in terms of the size of the economy. But if you look in terms of, where we are making an impact, where we can grow very much more is technology, because that will become a big factor in how to judge power, how to wield influence. In many ways, I would say people, because we are heading for a global workplace. In many cases, populations are shrinking. The world needs people. The world needs the right kind of people, people who have talent, people who have trained. And I think, if we do that at home in a big way, that is why in the third term, what the Modi government has focused on is how do you manufacture more, because from that technology will come, but how do you train people more. You would have seen Prime Minister inaugurated this internship program.
Right.
And how do we get the right kind of people with the right kind of skills right from schooling onwards? This would be a very big issue.
So, taking a cue from your answer with Prime Minister Modi's third term, so sir, I agree, and most of us sitting here would agree, that the world does look up to us as a rising economy, and we have achieved at certain levels, at certain distinctions. Sir, as a diplomat, my question to you is, in Lok Sabha elections, the results of the ruling Prime Minister Modi's government, it was 282 seats in 2014. Then 2019, it was 303 seats, and now 240 seats. So the question is, does the change in the numbers of 2024 Lok Sabha elections affect the continuity of marketing a stronger nation to the world?
Short answer is no. Longer answer is, see, when you go abroad, I was in Sri Lanka yesterday, I was in America the week before, in Europe the week before that, or 2 weeks before that. See, finally, for the world doesn't follow all the details, kisko kitna seat mila. This is something which is our domestic conversation. For them, they look, okay, who's in charge? Whose government is it? For them, it's a NDA government, it has Prime Minister Modi. And I would say one thing, look, in democratic politics, to get 3 terms back to back, look around the world. When was the last time, anywhere in the world, in the democratic world, when was the last time in the democratic world any president or prime minister was elected back to back 3 times? I think probably Angela Merkel is the only person I can think of in this century. Maybe in the last century, Margaret Thatcher, and of course in our own country, 60 years ago, Nehru. But after 1962, after 1962 till 2024, there are people who struggle to finish that term, leave alone get 2 terms. Third term wasn't even in anybody's mind. So, look, it's a big achievement. And politics will have its ups and downs. I'm relatively new to it, but this campaign I could see it from inside. So there are many factors which go. There are local issues, there are state issues. But the bottom line is what? The bottom line is that Prime Minister Modi is there for the third time.
Yeah. Sir, how does India respond to the criticism that is its growing relation with Israel, which may undermine its support for Palestinian rights?
No, I don't think it does. I don't think the criticism is valid. Look, we say in public, and I myself said this when we went to UN, that yes, we have a good, strong relationship with Israel. But at the same time, we also believe that there must be a solution for the Palestinian, problem, if you can call it that. And that the solution is a 2-state solution. That there must be a Palestinian homeland, but it has to be negotiated between the two. So because we say that we have good relations with Israel, we have not changed our position on Palestine. So, when it comes to these kinds of issues, big countries, mature countries, I think, have that ability. And they should, in my view, even small countries, if they are sensible countries, they should not say, because I have a relationship or I have this point of view. Life is not black and white. There are many sides to it. Good relations with Israel and support for a Palestinian homeland can, in my view, coexist, and that is the case with us.
Do we have an intent of mediating it if given an opportunity, or have you spoken about it?
No, look, I don't think the situation is a mediation kind of situation. Right now, there is an issue in Gaza, there's a different issue in Lebanon. There are tensions between Israel and Iran. There are, Houthis who are part of a regional issue who are firing missiles at different people. So it's very complicated, but I would say eventually, because people have tried to mediate in the past. I mean, America has mediated, Norway has mediated. There have been various Arab peace plans as well. So, to me, at least, this situation doesn't look like a mediation situation. Right now, it looks like how do you limit the conflict and how do you, find a way by which the humanitarian situation is met.
Given the unrest in West Asia and the disturbed Red Sea route, Israel aggression in Palestine, etc., what is the future of two flagship initiatives, that's I2U2, India, Israel, UAE, US, and IMEC, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor?
Last year, when G20 was going on, at that time, a number of countries got together. This is what, so that people know what IMEC is. This was India, which was the eye of the IMEC. The Arab countries, that is particularly UAE and Saudi Arabia, which was the Middle East, and then Europe. So you had France, Germany, Italy, and the US was also involved. So we reached an agreement when G20 was going on that we will make a connectivity corridor so that from India to Europe, there is a smooth passageway, logistics passageway, energy passageway, and a kind of a modern multimodal connectivity corridor. Now, I2U2 is a different grouping. It is India, Israel, which is the I2, and U2 is UAE and with the US. Now, all four of us, by the way, have, in a way have interests. Our 3 out of 4 are actually formally members of IMEC. Now, what happened obviously on October 7th when the attack on Israel took place and the fighting started, then the attention of many of these countries shifted to the fighting. That was natural. But I want to tell you, work is going on. We have projects with the UAE which are being executed. There are feasibility studies with the Saudis that are taking place. When I was in both these countries, we were discussing it. In Europe, even when I was in New York last week, everybody was keen to say, I hope, you keep keeping the idea alive. In my view, we need it more, not less. We need it more because, see, what is happening is the world is becoming a very risky place. If there is a war somewhere, if there's a conflict somewhere, if there's a terrorist attack somewhere, if there's a natural disaster somewhere, or if there's an accident somewhere, then what happens is, because the world is full of supply chains, these tend to stop. Some time ago, maybe you would remember reading in the newspaper, one ship got stuck in the Suez Canal. Okay? When that one ship got stuck in the Suez Canal for a number of days, it completely disrupted the trade between Europe and Asia. Now, you can have a totally different kind of example. There can be a climate event, somewhere there could be a big storm, there could be a big, rain, some other natural disaster, or a conflict. So, what happens if we are looking at a more global world where there is very, supply chain is very important, but also a world where climate events will happen, conflict will happen, risks will mount, then we need more pathways. It's like, if your house is in danger, you want 7 ways out rather than just 1 way out. So we are seeing today this corridor you and I spoke about, IMEC, but we are also seeing a corridor called International North-South Transport Corridor, which goes through India to Chabahar port, through Iran. We hope to take it upwards through Russia. We are seeing to the east of India. We are exploring actually from from Chennai to Vladivostok in Russia, so through the Pacific. We are looking at land that from eastern India, in fact through Manipur. We are looking at a corridor which will go through Myanmar all the way till Vietnam. So that project right now is going slowly. Work is still happening, but that project is going slowly because of problems in Myanmar. But just think about it. If there is a corridor which comes from Europe to India, lands in Western India, if we keep improving our logistics the way we are doing across India, and there's a corridor which will go from Eastern India all the way to Vietnam. From the Pacific Ocean through the Atlantic Ocean, you will actually get a corridor of which the Indian segment will be very, very crucial. So I would say maybe in the next 10 years, the entire connectivity picture for the world can change. So these are all very big ideas. But big ideas need, at home steps. And if you look at what we are trying to do today, in the third term, we have increased the number of rail corridors, increased the number of industrial modes. We are creating new ports, deep sea ports in India. So the whole idea today, what Prime Minister Modi is trying to do through Gati Shakti, is to modernize our infrastructure, not only for ourselves, but to plug it into this bigger movement which we will see. And that will actually have huge economic consequences for us.
Okay, sir. I shall narrate a situation or rather reality to you, and I wish to know how you read this. So, PM Modi visits Russia in July. Mm-hmm. Then PM Modi visits Zelensky in Ukraine in August. Then NSA Ajit Doval meets Russian President Putin to debrief on PM Modi's Kyiv visit in September. Mm-hmm. My question to you...
you forgot two events.
What?
Before PM Modi meets President Putin in July, PM Modi meets Zelensky in Italy in June.
So okay? I'm talking about home ground, sir.
So he meets Zelensky in June, he meets Putin in July, he meets Zelensky back in August, NSA Doval goes to meet Putin in August, and then PM Modi meets Zelensky again in September.
But I'm talking about the home ground, sir. At home ground. Sir, my question to you is, at times when we are very vocal and strong of our stance on world issues, why do we need to debrief the Russian president on PM Modi's visit to Ukraine?
No. What are we trying to do?
If you are trying to mediate, then why shy away?
No. You don't necessarily have to mediate. Sometimes you have to communicate.
Right.
Let's assume you have a problem with somebody out there. I come to you, we have a conversation. In my view, that conversation is of interest to the person out there. I go to them, you are okay with it. So I say, okay, let me go and describe that, what is our talk to this person. They tell me something. That's also of interest. I come back to you and say, that's what they say. Now you say something about it. I go back to them. So what is happening here? We are actually simultaneously talking to two countries who are having a conflict. Obviously, the talk is centered around what the conflict is about. It was necessary for NSA Doval to go to Russia so that the Russians know also what what Prime Minister spoke to Zelensky. So the whole idea today is that there is a conflict now which has entered its third year. Okay,
right.
It's a very serious conflict. If you look in terms of the human cost of this conflict, it is enormous. It's really hundreds of thousands of people have died. If you look at the economic consequences, it's huge. If you look at the implications for the world, the whole world has felt its implications because oil prices went up, food prices went up, there were various complications. Now, you can either watch this conflict and say, none of us can do anything about it, so it will end when it ends. Or you can say, I'm one of the few countries, or in our case also one of the few prime ministers, leaders, who has the ability to speak there, to come here, to be very, to be honestly, both parties in a way I would say respect or trust him, and to say, okay, let me have these conversations and see whether out of these conversations something moves, something, let us say, even though you are at war, you might say, okay, I agree on that point, or maybe this is a way to go forward. So I think these are the beginnings of a communication process. Where it will lead, I have not quite reached the point which you said. But to my mind, I would say this. What I saw in the UN, and after that I went to Washington as well. Much of the world supports what we did. People are very happy today. They at least say, okay, you have a person like Prime Minister Modi. Because you can count on your fingertips today who has the ability to go to both capitals. And that kind of communication, because see, Prime Minister Modi cannot go every time to another capital and meet. So sometimes, it could be NSA Doval, it could be me. I've also spoken to some of the foreign ministers, including of those two countries concerned. So I think it's a good thing that we are doing, and I can tell you one thing, the world is with us.
The star career like yours, which is, I think you're entering the 5th decade of diplomacy, am I correct? You have already done 4 with the services, and this is the 5th decade. So, with a star career like yours, and with over 4 decades of diplomacy, when can India expect a permanent seat at the UN Security Council?
Don't put it on me. See, it's a tough one. It's a tough one because in a way, you can say an organization was created. 5 countries were given a very special position in that organization. And those 5 countries have a lot of influence in that organization also. Now, when you want to change it, and you say, okay, other than the 5 countries, who else would be included in that? 2 things happen. Those countries are not always, all those countries I would say, some of them may be more open. All those countries don't want necessarily to have more people on the table. Anybody, it's like, it is like boarding a Delhi bus, you get into the seat, you don't want somebody else sharing the seat with you. So what they do is, some of them at least have tried to slow down this process. The second is, out of the balance of 188, you have to agree, okay, how does it get reformed? Not only which country will go there, but how many countries will go there, what will be the system, what will be the other changes which will happen. So it is a very complicated negotiation. But I will say this, that this year in the UN, we had something called the Pact of the Future. We are looking, okay, this decade, what should we try to achieve? And more countries today accept that there should be change. I would say more and more countries also accept that in that change, India should be one of the countries. I can see our acceptance growing. I may be in the 5th decade of my business, but I can tell you even 15 years ago, that kind of acceptance was not there. It has changed. But we are still not there. It will require more work, more push, more persuasion, more negotiation.
Okay, with this rising influence globally, why doesn't it reflect on our passports? We are still with, let it be the US Embassy for the visas, let it be the immigration, let it be the credibility of the passport itself.
See, 2 reasons. One, don't go necessarily by other people's credibility of your passport. Your passport has one thing. you ever get into trouble, will come and look after you.
That I'm sure.
Not many other countries today do that for their citizens. I mean, if you look around, whether it was Ukraine, whether it was Sudan, in many cases, whenever there is a problem, people say, there's a commercial flight, look at the schedule, buy your ticket and come home.
Yeah.
Okay? So your passport has one value. We look after you.
The safety.
And that nobody puts as a proposition in that index. Yeah. If you actually make an index which government, which country actually has systems for looking after its citizens in trouble, of replacing the passports, of hearing their complaints, of sending the diplomats or even at times the military to go and look after the citizens. Let me tell you, you'll get a very, very different list than the list which you normally look at. Now, having said that, sure, I mean, there will be issues because, look, there are volume issues. I mean, we are a large country where, increasingly people want to travel abroad. Now, also, we are a country where, for a variety of reasons, people work abroad or move. There's mobility abroad. Now, not all countries can absorb it. Not all countries, in fact, can even comprehend it. So sometimes they just look at our numbers and, it kind of, I would say, perplexes or sometimes even intimidates them. So I wouldn't go so much by, the idea. We are trying to increase the number of countries with whom we have visa on arrival, or we have, sort of no need for a visa.
Easier visa processes.
Or even e-visas.
E-visa.
But here's the interesting point. If you look today at giving visas, please see how easy it is to get, how efficient it is to get an Indian visa. Okay? Most people of other countries actually apply online, and within 48 hours, 72 hours, they actually get an online visa from us. Now, the truth is, many other governments, many other bureaucracies, actually they lag behind in their application of technology. So it's not only our fault, it is actually they are also sometimes backward in this respect.
Sir, in the light of the recent political developments and the fall of Sheikh Hasina government, how does Government of India plan to sustain or enhance its bilateral relations with the new Bangladesh government, with Sheikh Hasina taking shelter in India?
See, those are, Bangladesh is a neighbor to us, we are a neighbor to them. As close neighbors, I mean, I think not everybody always appreciates it. It's our biggest land boundary. Our boundary with Bangladesh is bigger, I think, if my numbers, if my memory is right, than even our border with China. Now, the fact is that we have today such deep ties between the two countries. I mean, if you look in terms of business, in terms of trade, in terms of movement of goods, in terms of fuel, electricity, our connections today are very, very deep. The movement of people between us is very, very large. So when neighbors are so tightly connected, I think the natural logic of that will assert itself. Now there will be, look, in every country in politics there are changes. Sometimes the changes are smooth, sometimes the changes are disruptive. But to me, what foreign policy should do is to plan for these changes. That if we have to say we need to build such a strong relationship, that even if there are political changes, the relationship is big enough and deep enough and important enough for it to absorb those changes. And I am very confident with Bangladesh that would be the case. We will have, there will be a certain, I would say, bumpy period. There are issues there which may be of concern. But at the end of the day, I am very confident that given how much that relationship really has developed, especially in the last decade, that we will be able to continue its strong and positive
So
direction.
the last decade was with Sheikh Hasina, and if the new government, whichever comes into place in Bangladesh, they request for extradition of Sheikh Hasina, then
No,
what
no,
would
look,
government be
these are hypothetical questions. Let me again say this. Put Bangladesh aside for a moment. Look at our other neighbors. We've had changes in government. Okay? Every time, you've had what many people said politically was a change which was challenging. People said, your relationship with that country is in trouble. What really happens? You watch after 6 months, watch after a year. The real cooperation starts to assert itself. So, with each one of our neighbors, if you look at Maldives, look at Sri Lanka, look at Nepal. So, with each of these countries, even though there have been changes, even though there have been governments with a very different mindset which have come to power, in reality, you can see that, eventually the logic of cooperation is today so strong. And we must make it as a matter of policy. When we say today neighborhood first, neighborhood first is about building that kind of cooperation. But, all our neighbors say, okay, here is India, okay, we know there's COVID, we can rely on them for vaccines. There's a Ukraine problem, okay, they will, somewhere they'll take care of our fertilizer supply. Sri Lanka, when they went in such deep difficulties, we were the country who stepped forward. So, my point to you is, yes, I'm not saying the politics of the day doesn't matter. I'm not saying these are not issues. We'll work our way through these issues. I'm saying ultimately the relationships are so strong that, it always comes back on track. That confidence I have.
Sir, the Indian side of Indo-Bangladesh border passes through the northeastern states and around 50 kilometers of river only for Assam, and mostly via the Dhubri district. The areas define very convenient yet illegal migration to Assam, which also affects Assam's socio-economic, socio-cultural dynamics. My question to you, sir, when will Assam be relieved from this stress of Bangladeshi immigration, that too illegally?
See,
there's a severe border issue there with the river.
Look, I tell you there is a larger issue. And before we came in here, you asked me what did I do in the morning. In the morning, I was actually delivering an address on Sardar Patel and governance. And I'll tell you why I'm going back to it. Being democratic does not mean being, agnostic or, I would say, dismissive of the requirements of good governance. In the modern age, if you are a modern state, how can you not secure your borders? Every modern state does that. But unfortunately, for a variety of reasons which all of you know better than me, we didn't do it. So, see, you cannot come to 2024 and say, okay, give me a quick solution. The problem has built up over 50, 60, 70 years. And you know that in Assam. Okay.
We are living with
So, my point is this. Today, if we are fencing our borders, we have every right to do so. We are fencing on our soil. And it's like fencing your borders like having a door to your house.
Correct.
Which one of you lives in a house where there's no door and it's open and anybody can come in and go? But yet as a country we were doing it. So my point is, how do you protect your borders is very, very crucial. And it's not just with the Bangladeshi, I accept the Myanmar border had a different issue because the people, free travel regime.
Yes, correct.
But even with that today, given the situation, we are actually reviewing that. China border, again, we deliberately left the infrastructure. There was no infrastructure on the border. Now, if there's no infrastructure on the border, you can't go into the edge of the, to the LAC and say, okay, on a regular basis, who's coming and who's going. That's what we are trying to change. I mean, look at the last 10 years. On the China border, our infrastructure budget has gone up 5 times. On the Bangladesh border, this government has made it a priority to secure that border. On Myanmar, if we have an issue which requires a review of the free movement regime, we are prepared to bite the bullet. So I do think that as a country, for us to know, this is our land. We must have the ability to secure our land. We must have a sense of who our citizens are. I don't think we should be defensive about it, and I don't think this goes against freedom. I think we owe it to ourselves.
Sir, I need some quick answers to a few small questions, short questions.
Provided your questions are okay. Provided your questions are okay.
Do you confirm or deny on reports of China entering Arunachal, taking over entering the border?
No, China entered the border in 1959. What are you talking about?
No, recently, in last 5-10 years.
Look, what happens is, in Arunachal Pradesh, we are very robust in our patrolling to the LAC. And I can tell you that, in terms of our patrolling in the LAC, there's been no major change
in the border.
I mean, last 5-10 years, maybe even longer.
Is Myanmar contributing in the ongoing instability in Manipur?
No, see, I would question your question, because, you know that across the border in Myanmar, the writ of the central government is very weak. In some places, it is non-existent. So when you say, is Myanmar contributing, it assumes that the government there is doing something. Are events on that side of the border affecting this side of the border? Answer is yes. But if you tell me, is it a governmental policy? I think the answer would be no.
Sir, with China's checkbook policy and
China's
checkbook policy of lending, making a country go into debt, or however they do it best, and with their investments in Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, how vulnerable do you think is the chicken's neck of the Northeast?
See, there are two aspects here. China is a neighbor. We should expect China to do what is in China's interest, just like we will do what is in our interest. So when you have a large neighbor, we have to learn to compete. And in my view, if you are looking at some of our neighboring countries and say, okay, is there a Chinese project there? I think the best way of dealing with that is make sure there's an Indian project, and make sure that our partnership, our support, our contribution is appreciated at least as much as those of other countries. So we cannot say other countries should not operate in our neighborhood. That's not. And our neighbors, after all, will also, if there is any sense of competition, they will use it to their advantage. That's natural. So my first point is, we need to compete. My second point is, where the Northeast is concerned, our first duty is to develop the Northeast, give attention to the Northeast, put in that kind of investment and resources. Don't only pay lip service. For many, many years, 20 years, people are saying, look east policy. We sometimes say, look east should start in Delhi, looking east at the Northeast. And to look east and act east in the Northeast, which means, ministers should go, programs should move, investments must happen, private sector must be active there, more educational institutions should be there. So, when I read about projects like, okay, now in Assam, we are seeing a semiconductor factory. Right. That really impresses me, because that's not where people 10 years ago would have expected such an enterprise to come. To me, that's real change that is happening there. And I see it in other areas. I mean, I look at many professions today, and I can see visibly the participation of people from the Northeast in those professions is growing.
Okay. Coming to the end, I'll do a quick rapid fire, which is mostly non-political. I'll try to keep it very simple and quick. You have to choose between, I'll give you two options. You have to choose either of them, and you have to choose. There are no prizes for the winning also. So the first question is, one person you wish to have dinner with, Kim Jong-un or George Soros?
What was the first one?
Kim Jong-un, the North
Okay,
Korean.
I think this is Navratri, I'm fasting.
No wonder your 40 years of diplomacy is on your lips. Okay. If name a US leader you would challenge for a presidential debate, Joe Biden or Donald Trump?
I would challenge for a
Yes.
Look, why I'm surprised you actually left out a third person, which is the Democratic candidate. So,
Okay.
but I would challenge them to have a debate. I wouldn't get into that debate. My America policy is to stay out of their debates.
Okay. So, do you watch Bollywood films?
Yes, not as much as I would like to, but from time to time.
Yeah, okay. So, which film title do you think best represents India's relation with Pakistan? So, the options are हम आपके हैं कौन और हम साथ साथ हैं.
अरे ये सोचना होगा पर मैं I'm going to Pakistan. So I will leave that film untitled for a moment. वापस आके पूछ लेना.
So maybe on 17th I'll give you a call for an answer on telephone.
हाँ नहीं वापस आके पूछ लेना बता देंगे.
ठीक. So given your extensive travel, what would you buy at a duty-free shop, liquor or perfume?
Probably neither, because most of the time I go through airports in a days, and I would say on balance I may be looking at, I don't know, maybe my colleagues are here, probably a book or a tie. These are more likely.
Okay, which aspect of yourself do you prefer, the diplomat Jaishankar or the minister Jaishankar?
It depends where I am, so both are useful. I would say a kind of a hybrid.
Since you cover the whole world for work, on a holiday, where would you rather go, Maldives or Lakshadweep?
Maldives or?
Lakshadweep.
The president of Maldives is coming tomorrow.
So I take it as Maldives for now.
No, I didn't say that. I said the president of Maldives is coming here tomorrow.
Okay. So give me the first adjective that comes to your mind when I take the following names. Prime Minister Modi.
Leader.
Dr. Manmohan Singh.
I would say prime minister, thinker.
Okay. Atal Bihari Vajpayee.
In a sense, large-hearted, sort of, how would you say?
Visionary or far-sighted.
Like that,
Rahul Gandhi.
I think that's where you want me to pass.
Okay. Amitabh Bachchan.
Oh, look, for us, he's the icon of our times, especially his voice.
Okay.
I think nobody in my mind matches it.
Deepika Padukone.
I remember her father.
Okay.
He was a great badminton player.
Oh, yeah. Prakash Padukone. Arnab Goswami.
Good friend.
Subrahmanyam Swami.
Do you still have any more questions left?
Just one last one that's more trickier than this one. Okay, which do you think is more challenging? Foreign diplomacy or household diplomacy?
What's the difference for me?
Household diplomacy meaning your home, house.
Sure.
There's no difference.
No, I mean, one moves smoothly from the other.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, this brings me in to a conversation with Dr. S. Jaishankar. Thank you so much for being patient.